everybody. I'm going to take a guess and say that I'm live right now. My name is James Corbett. I am one of the co-founders of Impact, and Impact is instant messaging platform and collaboration tool for law enforcement. So essentially what we've built is your AI-powered virtual fusion center. Now, for those of you who don't know what a fusion center is, I'm just going to quickly go over the history of that because it'll give you a real insight to what we're actually building here. So a fusion center is, Department of Homeland Security developed them to help with information sharing among law enforcement agencies, both federal, state, and local, or not both, but all federal, state, and local agencies. And what we're trying to do over here is to combine and create a tool almost like a Slack or a Discord combining their great features and creating a Slack or Discord for law enforcement. And then the artificial intelligence is going to work as a little brain on the back end, where if an officer from one district is communicating about something or about a case that is similar to what another officer in another district or in another town or state even is talking about something similar, we're going to pair those guys up, those detectives or officers, with each other so that they can begin to collaborate and be like, hey, is this something that we are both working on? Is this a similar case, a similar perpetrator? And if it is, that makes our AI smarter. If it's not, it makes our AI smarter. And also will allow the officers to work together if they have to. Now, in law enforcement, there is a bit of an issue, just like actually every industry has this problem. I'm sure developers run into this. I'm sure salesmen definitely run into this. And in any industry, there is the ego. So I want to solve this case, me, I want all of the credit. So what we're trying to do is say, hey, listen, we're going to match you guys up. You can still say no, of course. Our platform is just suggesting, hey, you two should work together because they're similar cases. But if they don't, they're going to be able to work and collaborate with other officers to solve cases faster. So the officer that we actually worked with directly to build this tool, his name is Detective Steven Sitta, and they actually use Slack right now in Hartford, Connecticut, and up in Connecticut in general. But they're using it almost illegally. But what we built is it's CJIS compliant, Criminal Justice Information Systems compliant, and HIPAA compliant. So we're building the platform to be compliant on both sides, so that officers can talk about whatever they need. We are not a database system, so we're not saving anything in a database. We're just for information sharing and collaboration, just like a Slack. So the way we're actually working with that is we actually give power to departments to choose when their information will get released or deleted from the system. So we zip it into a file and send it to them so they can download it within X amount of time, and we get rid of it on our end. We will also give powers to different departments to allow us to build onto their systems, their existing servers, because there's plenty of states and larger and police agencies, law enforcement agencies that have their own server farms, and we would even build directly onto there and still connect it to everyone else. And it's a really exciting tool for us, simply because, or it's a really exciting proposition, I should say, for us, because you'll notice as you look at the trend of law enforcement agencies and their hiring, it's actually getting smaller. So what we're building will allow these smaller departments and these smaller agencies, even New York City's decreasing in size, to work together and actually maximize resources at that point. Especially with something like a little bit of an AI brain on the back end that gets smarter and smarter every day, to help them in their efforts of saving lives. And for instance, I look forward to the day that we help them solve maybe a big saving a large amount of children, right, from sex slavery, which is a topic that has become really becoming more prominent. And I hope that we can help marshals, U.S. Marshals, save those children. And even, finding murderers or thieves and things like that, of course, as well, is very important. But that's kind of like a little mini milestone for me that I look forward to. So yeah, that's it. I think in a nutshell. I love actually having a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Um, and are there any questions right now because if not, I'll just continue to talk a little bit about use cases.
No, not quite yet. So I mean, you can
Okay,
keep talking. You got time.
cool. So yeah, so Impact, I'll tell you guys a little bit about where it came from and the idea and everything. So a little bit of background on me is I personally went to Stockton University, I went to Columbia University, and I actually ended up trying to build a tool that helps out communities to help them collaborate better and easier, have actual healthy conversations instead of detrimental ones. Because one of the things that we studied at Columbia was actually the impact of political correctness. I'm sure all of us now see the landscape that we're living in. That whole methodology led me down this crazy path where I actually ended up being a founder and co-founder of this right here, Project Refit. It is a tool that it's Project Refit Blue Skies. We launched it out. It's actually the first app of its kind for the military, first responders, and veteran space, where we're connecting guys instantly together to tap of a button to check in on each other, mental health wise. But I noticed as we were building these tools too, I'm sorry, as I was doing my research, also political correctness was becoming a problem even for law enforcement. So I built up a tool called Impact Live. So it's actually a live streaming tool where we will allow officers. This is also going into our products, by the way, so it's kind of cool to talk about. It's a little ahead of its time. It is completed, but that's not the tool that we're selling yet. But it will be a plugin. Anyway, so what it is, Impact Live, is a live streaming tool where police officers can be in their cars driving, and they can go live to their communities around them directly and introduce themselves. So it becomes almost like cops or live PD or something of those sorts, but within your own local community, and officers can use it to get to know their citizens. Now, it's not for every officer because some officers are undercover, they can't have their names known, and blah, 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 blah. It would be more for the community relations officers and the guys that are trying to move up in the ranks, let's say, also, and become a chief one day. The more like they want to be more visual with their citizens, so constituents, if you will, too. But that's what we built to try to bridge that divide, because political correctness and a lack of knowledge of who your officers are. The theory is if you get to know your officer, when you have let's say to give you an example, actually, the most dangerous encounter a police officer can have is actually one where they pull someone over. And there's a few factors happening there where one, the officer might get hit by a car as he's out there. He might get struck by a vehicle and killed. Or two, the person in the vehicle tries to kill him. Or ends up becoming a high-speed chase or something along those lines. So what we're trying to aim at is that officer, maybe he has one encounter that might have gone bad, but instead of it going bad, the officer, the person in the vehicle might know who that officer is and have seen him before on a live stream, and might be like, oh, wait, I know this guy. This is, in my case, this is Officer Corbett, right? And I'm not a police officer, by the way, not impersonating, just in the example. He could be like, oh, it's Officer Corbett. Like, hey, what's up, Officer Corbett? It's like, hey, how are you today? And the whole conversation changes. You can see that I'm a good guy. I'm just doing my job. I'm genuinely looking out for my community, right? Those kind of things could have a huge impact. And we eventually want to do things where you can buy an officer a cup of coffee, or the officer can have a stream that he's doing for a nonprofit on behalf of a nonprofit and raise money for his favorite nonprofit. And all the money and proceeds go to that nonprofit. Things like that to really build the community together, right? He could be doing a stream for the soccer team that, they just made nationals and they need to raise money to send the kids. Like, that is the idea behind Impact Live, right? We want to make an impact for the officers on the community. Sure, it stands for instant messaging platform and collaboration tool. However, there's more to it. The actual impact that we're trying to allow these officers to have is one that we've been thinking about deeply. So it's actually an exciting proposition, because you'll open up a whole new world of understanding and getting to know officers near you. With all of that said, are there any questions or anything like that?
Nope, nothing so far.
Still no.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
cool.
again, if people do come up with things, or by the time that we have to take a break for closing, we
Sure.
always have the room for Q&A for people.
Okay, cool. I love back and forth conversation on things. But anyway, yeah, I totally got it. But yeah, so that's the instant or the Impact Live tool that we're going to be plugging in eventually, and what we plan to do with all of this. So we actually plan on having even with between Impact, the virtual fusion center that's AI powered, and the Impact Live tool. We plan to give a full suite of tools to law enforcement agencies. Of course, some agencies wouldn't even use it. For instance, Impact Live, we don't expect a federal agency to be using that, right? That's more for the local police departments, even state police departments, because some barracks in state police departments, like in New Jersey, I know, they actually service entire towns. Also, sheriff's departments might be able to use this, and um, uh, uh, county police departments like Camden County Police Department. There's anybody that serves the public directly, we would imagine would be on the live tool. And what we plan on actually collecting data from that is how the officers interact with people and actually how the citizens interact with the officers. And that could go all the way down to even if the officer talks about his favorite lunch spot in town, we might be able to send eventually we would like to do this, send that restaurant, let's say, a sticker that says, hey, approved by officer XYZ on Impact, right? So we can actually try to even help support business locally, that and the police department could be a part of that, and we help the department with their community policing in that way, so they don't have to worry about doing those things, like the police department, that is. We would automatically be helping the police department with their community policing efforts, which is, community policing, by the way, is one of the most important forms of policing and also public relations. And when done effectively, it can actually qualm any kind of unrest, because the people know, especially in today's day and age, they know who their officers are. And we know that because I actually gave a tool to Camden Police Department in New Jersey. And if you don't know Camden, New Jersey, they're trying to repair it. They're trying to make it better. They're doing their best. But it is a violent city. It is a crime-ridden city in many areas. The downtown or the waterfront area is getting built up, and they're trying to improve the city from the water out, so gentrification, if you will, but they're trying to do gentrification properly, where they bring in jobs and things for the people that are actually in that city, in Camden City. So what we did as an organization, we gave them a tool for them to use to live stream, but we built it to allow them to live stream to YouTube, Twitter, Periscope and Facebook at one time, to make it easier to start out with before building the actual standalone app. So now, we're not saying we were the direct reason why Camden had such a good relationship with their citizens, where there was no unrest and no riots or anything like that, but we certainly played a part when everything ended up happening. We played a part in that because we allowed the officers to talk to their citizens and the citizens to interact back with their police department. And to actually talk, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we actually do have some questions coming in now if you wanted to hit some of them.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to say one more thing, actually, to bring a close to that. And I'm so excited. Thank you guys for asking questions. I cannot wait. And I want to give a heads up that anything too technologically related, I might actually fail because the developers, I'm the designer and the research guy, and the I guess you could say the visionary of it, but the people that are behind the scenes are the ones really grinding it out. But I'm going to do my best on those. But anyway, to kind of tie everything up, one of the most important pieces of data that I actually studied that allowed me to think of this product, and I forgot to mention it, and that's the live streaming product specifically, was that of genocide. I actually was studying genocide because negotiation, conflict resolution, I was studying that at Columbia. It's on a mass scale, you study conflict. So genocide, actually, there's a graph that showed, and I wish I could show things with you guys, but follow my hands. There's a graph that showed like little spikes here and there, and it would basically, when they fell, when a spike went up, they would sequester the persons, or they would silence the people. And they would do that for like 10 years or 15, 20 years of silencing people. You'd see like small, big spikes, and then it'd go back down. And if they keep on doing that, not listening to the people, you see a huge spike, right? And we go right off the charts, basically. And then that's when genocide, violence happens. And what my professor and I spoke, Peter Coleman, you can look him up, TEDx. What we spoke about was how political correctness could be that silencing of a certain voice, right, of people's voices, and silencing them, and that could actually lead to that spike. And I specifically, because I study criminology and such, knew the relationship between citizens and officers, so I applied that to that. I wanted people to be able to talk to the officers and see them and get to know them, so we could give them a voice, and give the officers a voice, back and forth, having actual chat. Having an actual conversation. But anyway, that is it. What is the question? Or
cool.
What are the questions?
Yeah, we got several. So from Quadling, he wants to know how well the application is secured.
Yeah, so I know that we're built on Amazon right now. We use S3. So CJIS compliance also goes all the way down to not just the software, but also where it's being stored. So Amazon, of course, they have their servers are protected behind gates and bars and things like that. So we also have HIPAA compliance because we use a platform called PubNub, which is really good for. They have 99.9% rate of security for chat, and you can look them up. PubNub, it's a great chat platform, and we use MLA, MFA. MFA, multi-factor authentication. And we're actually looking to move over to Azure, and Azure is, obviously they're the new they're going to be providing the government with their services with their Microsoft Azure with their server farms. They're going to provide them with their servers. So we're eventually going to move over to that, move over to Azure, because they're working with government directly. But yeah, so when it comes to security, we put in every single step that it takes to be secure, even all the way down to we actually separate departments from each other. So the only channel departments can get into are actually general channels. Like, you can look up any department, any officer within a platform, but you cannot enter into all of their, unless they give you access to the other channel, just like things Slack or Discord. Unless they give you access to the other channels within a department, the only one you have access to is a general channel. So that in the general channel, you can ask, okay, I'm looking for an officer who's an expert in this field. That's all the way down to that. So we're trying to keep everything pretty secure that way as well. So admin level, and we have different sign-in credentials that you'd use. So that's hopefully answers your question. Also, I know that we have 256-bit encryption, and we're actually end-to-end encryption as well, using PubNub. It's end-to-end encryption. So we have a lot of security.
Cool. Another question from Acula 109. How do you connect? How does the AI connect things when the database gets dumped every hour?
So it's not every hour. But here's the cool thing. So we make a partnership. So that's actually a great question. So we make it's not every hour. It's actually we're going to be partnering up with an AI company. I'm not going to say their name because it's illegal actually right now. But illegal in terms of like the agreements and such. But we are actually going to have them be the database. So they're going to be plugged into us, so we can be separate. It's actually a pretty awesome partnership that way. We can be separate. They can be reading everything in their databases, the police department's database, whatever. And then if their officers are talking about something, they can actually partner everyone up. But also, to answer that question even further, we're hoping that officer or police departments, we get so smart eventually that while they're having their conversations about a certain perp and another officer's having a similar conversation, they will be able to match it up. And we're also on top of that too, because you said 1 hour getting dumped. It's actually, I don't know how often the information is going to get dumped and deleted off our systems. It's up to the department. So it could be every hour. I doubt that, by the way, but it could be as long as 2 years or 3 years before things are deleted off our system. It could be, again, as little as an hour. So they actually set the retention rates, if you will. The department has all control over that. But again, going back to the database, to answer your question even further, let's say, what if it's a serial killer, right? In the case of a serial killer, and the serial killer, the last time he killed was 15 years ago. Well, if the database or if the AI that we're partnered with, that company, if they have access to that data, and there's an officer talking about, like, I mean, similar, like, wait a second, all of these descriptions match up to this serial killer or these 3 serial killers, let's bring it into and say, hey, look, officer or detective from XYZ department, there's actually people talking about, or there's perps that are similar to these descriptions and are serial killers. These are their names. You should look into these. So it's actually just like assisting the officer that way too, but it would be connected back with that AI company. It's not us that's handling that. It's a partnership that we made. I hope that answers that question directly. If not, please clarify. I'm totally down to help make you understand.
For sure. Quadling also asked, why wouldn't Leos just use commercial off-the-shelf stuff like Slack?
Sure. So right now, Slack, that's a great question. So officers are using it right now, but they actually aren't. Slack isn't CJIS compliant. So Slack has, they call it a God mode, they meaning the officers I was working with, where it actually is a vulnerability in Slack's system, where they can actually read and conduct search within a department, within the departments and such. We don't have that. We don't allow that ability, right? So we actually have to partner with a company to do the search for us, because our servers never see what's being said. It's end-to-end encryption. So we don't actually have, if you hack into our servers, you're not going to see shit, right? Ever. Pardon my language. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. My bad, guys. But I do that. So you're not going to be able to see anything.
How dare you?
Actually the thing. I know. I'm sorry. But that's how, and that's what actually every department that we've spoken to so far is excited about. They're like, oh, that's amazing. It's also because another thing that's a difference, and again, great question, Quadling. Another difference for us is, especially for larger agencies, they want to own the data. They want to have a server or a platform like Slack on their own servers. We can provide that. We can come in, install it. Like, that's a major difference actually between us and a Slack, to answer your question. But also, another aspect to it is how we're designed. So what I mean by that is, you can actually search for any department, any officer, and you're searching. It's not like Slack where you would search and you'd see a bunch of different like servers and such. It's just for law enforcement, right? At least the launch of it will just be for the public safety sector. So you're getting in touch with and searching for someone that's within that arena. So it's a major important step for us. So and also
no, go ahead.
separation.
No, yeah. Another super important question from Acula 109. Would the AI know how to connect officers based on memes shared?
Oh my God. What we talked about? So that's a great one. So we talked about lunches, right? So we actually talked. So that's where I also came up with, and that's why I talked about when we send department, like, hey, your department likes to eat here. Like, you got a sticker that's sealed. We're actually expecting officers to use it to talk about, hey, where should we get lunch today? And have them talk about that. So maybe we can share with, and that's such a cool idea, actually. Maybe we could share with the police, like, hey, you guys love to use this meme. Let's let people know in your community, on your Facebook pages and your Twitter, this is the meme of the month. That is such a cool idea. What a great, I'm excited about that. That is so cool. Sorry, I'm getting oddly excited right now. Okay, if anybody else has any other great suggestions like that, let me know. That's super cool.
Another question. Thank you, Aka. From Beep Boop Beep in Twitch chat. Like, a lot of these questions are great and super serious, but I also have to read their screen names out, which is awful. Are there physical security concerns with oversharing about law enforcement officers? Not the best time to be in law enforcement right now.
So I assume you're talking about Impact Live with that question. Now, that is a great question. That is actually something even that's actually one of the reasons why we moved away from Impact Live right away and tried to find another thing to solve, which is how we ended up into Impact, just Impact the tool. We actually built Impact Live first. We talked, I can't tell you how many people I talked, how many departments I talked to, officers and such. Every single one of them was like, dude, like, are they going to know where I'm at? Like, they didn't understand fully even like that they wouldn't be able to see where you are, like via the camera. Like they can't tell, especially if it's angled properly. But it's also sometimes even the sharing of like too much of the name and such. But effective community policing, you're supposed to do that, right? You're supposed to know who your officer is. You're supposed to know who your politician is, right? You're supposed to know who the CEO of a publicly traded company is. And I think that eventually when we gain, this is the idea, we gain the trust of law enforcement through building and solving a major problem, like we are with the Impact tool, and then saying, hey, look, we have this Impact Live plugin. This is how you'd use it. These are the use cases in these instances here. You can even just have a weekly community address from the chief of police, right? Or a monthly community address from the chief of police that you put up on there. That's not the full use of the tool that we would recommend, but that's one thing you can do. Because yes, the identity of the officers and such, people might be afraid to use it right now, especially right now. But I think we need to learn to move past that, in my opinion, because if you look at, again, that data that I talked about, the genocide data, not saying there's going to be genocide, please don't misconstrue my words. But if you look at that kind of data and you see that when you're silencing people, and honestly, law enforcement is silent. If you look at how it's been moving as an industry, they've been becoming more and more secretive. And that's not actually a good thing when you're serving people, right, in a community. So we're trying to teach them how to actually communicate again through the Impact Live tool and showing them that, hey, the future is actually very bright if you open up a little bit more and you are not afraid to show who you are. Authenticity, if you will. So we're trying to allow police departments to show that they're fucking people. I'm sorry, that they're people, and that they have feelings and that they have emotions, you know, and they just want to do their best for you. They're not just out there to hurt you. They actually want to help their community and protect their community. Now, officers do have a very difficult job in that they have to deal with people that are melted into carpets, as one person put it. Not to get that, you know, blunt with you guys, but let's put it in perspective here. They have to see that kind of stuff, right? So they are hurting also. And I think it's something that's been overlooked. Again, that's a part of Project Refit. That's overlooked a lot of the time, and we forget the human element, and that's what we're trying to bring back. So it's a great question, and it is one that we are trying to get over by gaining their trust by solving problems. So for them, to show them that we actually care as a company too, and as people. So
awesome. Well, we actually do have some more questions, but we're running up on time because we got to get to closing ceremonies pretty quickly. But the remaining questions should be in the question Q&A chat. So,
okay, cool.
like, there's a couple
I'll pop
from
over to the village or something, and we can talk too.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. All right, cool. Well, James, thank you so much, and for everybody else listening, we're gonna take a quick break and do our closing in just a little bit.
See you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, James.